It's 1431, Transylvania, a land of mist, mountains, and secrets, where peasants still make the sign of the cross when the wind howls too long. A boy is born. His father, Vlad II, is a noble warrior and a proud member of the Order of the Dragon, a knightly brotherhood created to defend Christendom from the Ottoman Turks. Dracula means dragon, but in medieval dialect it also means devil, so when his son was born, they called him Dracula, the son of the dragon. Centuries later, the name would take on another meaning, the son of hell. When Vlad was 11, his father was forced to hand him and his younger brother over to the Ottoman Sultan as a gesture of friendship. In medieval politics, friendship usually meant, we'll keep your children alive as long as you behave. So young Vlad grew up inside the empire he was supposed to fight. He studied Turkish, swordplay, strategy, and fear. He saw men impaled, flayed, and burned alive, and while most children would be scarred forever, Vlad took notes. Fear, he realized, was an instrument, precise, predictable, effective. He learned the lesson, and he learned it well. Years later, his father and brother were murdered, one buried alive, the other beheaded. When Vlad returned to Wallachia, the throne was empty, the country divided, and betrayal cheaper than bread. To survive, you had to be terrifying. To rule, you had to be the most terrifying. So Vlad decided that if his people wouldn't love him, they would fear him, and that would be enough. If Netflix existed in the 15th century, Vlad's reality show would be called How to Build a Nation on Fear. Impalement wasn't an execution method, it was theater. A long, slow, horrifying show meant to turn rebellion into obedience. The victim would be tied down and a sharpened stake carefully driven through the body, not to kill quickly, but to make death take hours, sometimes days. It was anatomy, geometry, and sadism blended into statecraft. And somehow it worked. When the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II marched an army of over 100,000 into Wallachia, he found a valley filled with 20,000 impaled corpses. Soldiers, traitors, peasants. The forest of the impaled, they called it. The Sultan took one look and turned around. The strongest empire in the world, defeated by one man's reputation. Vlad saw himself as a reformer. Twisted, yes, but still a reformer. He hated thieves, liars, and corrupt nobles. Under his rule, you could sleep on the road with gold in your hand and wake up untouched. But if you stole a coin, you'd wake up on a stake. He once invited all the beggars of Wallachia to a feast, tables full of food, wine, music. When they were full and happy, he locked the hall and set it on fire. "I have solved poverty," he supposedly said. Problem solved. Medieval efficiency. Another story tells how a servant forgot to clean a goblet. The next morning, that servant was decorating the courtyard, vertically. From that day on, Wallachia became spotless. Harsh? Definitely. Effective? Absolutely, and here's the strange part. Many peasants admired him. Because while nobles trembled, commoners finally had order. No robbers, no bribes, no chaos. He even placed a golden cup by the public well, and nobody dared to steal it. Under Vlad, crime dropped to zero. Technically, so did the criminals. Vlad's biggest problem wasn't his enemies, it was his public relations team, or rather the German merchants he had taxed to the bone. They printed pamphlets calling him the monster of Wallachia, the butcher prince, and the son of Satan. Think medieval tabloids, but bloodier. A century later, when Irish writer Bram Stoker found those pamphlets, he thought this guy would make a fantastic vampire. And so, the fictional Count Dracula was born. Stoker's Dracula sucked blood. The real Vlad just spilled it. Contemporary chroniclers say that Vlad enjoyed hosting banquets among the impaled. He dined calmly while hundreds of bodies twitched around him. When a visiting envoy covered his nose from the stench, Vlad ordered him impaled too, so he won't have to smell it anymore. Dark humor, 15th century edition. He turned cruelty into performance art. Every stake was a warning, every scream a note in the orchestra of fear. You didn't just die in Wallachia, you starred in a political message. His love life, predictably tragic. His first wife, or mistress depending on the source, leapt from a fortress tower during a siege, shouting, "Better to drown than be captured by the Turks." Wallachian women were not into compromise. His second wife was a Hungarian noblewoman who probably thought she was marrying a brave warrior. Instead, she got a man who solved marital arguments the same way he solved diplomacy, decisively, and with pointy wood nearby. If Tinder existed back then, her review would read, "Intense eyes, great posture, terrible conflict resolution skills." In 1462, the Sultan returned with an army so vast that the ground itself trembled. Vlad knew he couldn't fight fair, so he fought like a ghost. One night, he disguised his soldiers and infiltrated the Turkish camp. What followed was chaos. Tents burning, horses screaming, blades flashing in the dark. Thousands died, including men who killed each other in panic. The Sultan barely escaped. Vlad called it a military success. Historians call it the original jump scare. But the Ottomans were too strong. Soon he had to flee north, to his ally, the King of Hungary. The king thanked him by throwing him into prison. Vlad spent years in a Hungarian cell. No throne, no soldiers, just stone, iron, and silence. A visiting monk once wrote that Vlad caught rats and impaled them on small sticks for entertainment. Was it true? Who knows? But somehow you believe it, don't you? Eventually politics shifted and he was released. He even married again, probably out of boredom or habit. But Wallachia was no fairy tale waiting for his return. The throne was blood-stained, and so were the hands reaching for it. In 1476, Vlad rode into one last battle. He was outnumbered, betrayed, surrounded. Classic ending. Some say he was killed by his own men. Others say Ottoman soldiers took his head. That head was sent to the Sultan, preserved in honey, displayed on a spear in Istanbul. A fitting irony. The impaler impaled. As for his body, it vanished. Some say it rests in a monastery near Snagov. When archaeologists opened the supposed tomb centuries later, it was empty, just dust and legend. In Western Europe, Vlad became the ultimate villain, but in Romania, he's still seen as a national hero, the man who protected his land when others bowed to the Sultan. His statue stands in Bucharest. His face decorates wine bottles and tourist mugs. The monster became a brand. And maybe that's the final twist. He lost his life, but gained immortality, not through blood, but through storytelling. Was Vlad a psychopath, or just a ruler who understood the psychology of survival? In an age without laws, treaties, or mercy, fear was order. Terror was cheaper than an army and faster than justice. His cruelty wasn't random, it was policy, and it worked, at least until everyone hated him equally. Maybe that's the real tragedy of Vlad. He built a country where no one dared to sin, but also one where no one dared to live. Vlad the Impaler wasn't immortal, but the fear he created was. It outlived empires, crossed centuries, and eventually became fiction. And perhaps that's the greatest irony of all. He spent his life trying to control people through fear, and now millions willingly watch movies and read books about him. His reign of terror became pop culture. Netflix wins again. Vlad wanted power. He got eternity. He wanted control. He became a myth. He wanted to rule through fear, and succeeded so completely that we still whisper his name 5 centuries later. He wasn't a vampire. He was something worse. He was human. And that's what makes the story of the real Dracula truly terrifying.